Walt Whitman is perhaps the foundational American poet. There are arguments that American literature starts and ends with Walt Whitman. I disagree wholeheartedly, but I do want to read you something from Harold Bloom on Walt Whitman to get a little bit of perspective on what it is that we're going to be talking about today. Bloom says, Walt Whitman is a difficult poet, complex, evasive, subtle, hermetic, who wants his poetry to look easy. Democratic in ideology, Whitman personally was intensely private and elitist, and his open stance toward his readers is a rhetorical fiction. Whitman, with Emily Dickinson, is one of the two great American poet originals. He does not have Dickinson's cognitive originality. What is new in Whitman is expressed in gesture, nuance, rhetorical stance, the mythology of the self. No poet since Whitman in any language I know has anything like his largeness of being, his enormous consciousness of himself, of his time, and of his nation. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for 30 must-read poems. Today's poem, a patient noiseless spider. I don't know why that was so hard for me to get through. The rest of the video will go much smoother than this, I promise. This video will contain a brief biography of Walt Whitman. Then we will have the types of poetry for which Whitman is known, and finally a discussion of the poem itself. This video will be in 3 separate playlists here on the channel: the 30 must-read poems playlist, a Walt Whitman playlist that exists on the page, and finally poetry discussions, a playlist that is approaching 800 videos soon-ish. So, who was Walt Whitman? Walter Whitman Jr. was born May 31st, 1819, in West Hills, New York. His parents, Walter and Louisa Van Velser, were Quakers, and as they were Quakers, Walt was the second of 9 children. The family struggled financially and did not firmly plant roots during Walt's childhood. Walt quit school at 11 to help his family financially. He was a low-level assistant for a law firm before becoming an apprentice. Later, continuing his bent toward a literate type of employment, he became what was known as a printer's devil, which sounds strange for a Quaker, and it was a difficult job and actually an extremely storied position in general. The ranks of printers' devils through history includes Ambrose Bierce, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Mark Twain, and many others, as well as a man named Johann Fust, whose story goes all the way back to funding the original Gutenberg press and may have indirectly inspired Marlowe's story of Dr. Faustus. Walt continued up the ladder in publishing and began getting his own poems published at just 16. Walt would work in printing and start teaching before founding his own newspaper, The Long Islander, when he was just 20 years old. He ran the paper for 10 months and then he sold it. Then Whitman sort of bounced around the world of publishing and occasionally teaching and publishing his own work with seemingly the same scattershot focus before the New York Sunday Dispatch would publish his serial novel, Life and Adventures of Jack Ingle, in 1852. And in 1855, Whitman's crowning achievement, Leaves of Grass, would hit the press. Whitman self-funded the first 795 print run. The reaction was nuclear. It was derided as a profane and pornographic work. Whitman was personally insulted. It is even conjectured that later in life Whitman would lose jobs as people found out that he had published Leaves of Grass. But it also drew praise from the likes of Henry David Thoreau, William Michael Rossetti, and Ralph Waldo Emerson, who called it the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom that America had yet contributed. Very high praise considering Moby Dick was published 4 years prior. Shortly after Leaves of Grass was first published, Walt Sr. died. Whitman, now graduated to the eldest man in his family and an expert in manliness, published Manly Health and Training in 1858 under the alias Mose Velsor. And if you're an American history buff and you hear the year 1858, you know what's coming. And Walt Whitman published Beat, Beat, Drum in the summer of 1861 as encouragement for Union troops. It was a tumultuous time for the Whitman family as well. His brother, George, served and was captured. He had to commit his brother Jesse to Kings County Lunatic Asylum, and his brother Andrew died of consumption. Not to mention the fact that Walt was hired into a government position and then fired from his post. His writing career, however, had one more hurrah left during his life, as he wrote "O Captain, My Captain" after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. In 1873, Walt Whitman suffered a stroke, and his health never recovered. Still, he would remain active and social before editing what is now known as the deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass in 1891. March 26, 1892, Walt Whitman died, aged 72 years old. Walt Whitman is known most for literary realism and transcendentalism. So what is literary realism? It is a literary movement that represents reality by portraying mundane, everyday experiences as they are in real life. It depicts familiar people, places, and stories primarily about the middle or lower classes of society. Literary realism seeks to tell a story as truthfully as possible instead of dramatizing or romanticizing it. And finally, transcendentalism. Transcendentalism is an American literary, philosophical, religious, and political movement of the early 19th century centered around Ralph Waldo Emerson. Other important transcendentalists were Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, Lydia Marie Child, Amos Bronson Alcott, Frederick Henry Hedge, Elizabeth Palmer Peabody, and Theodore Parker. Stimulated by English and German Romanticism, the biblical criticism of Herder and Schleiermacher, and the skepticism of Hume, the Transcendentalists operated with the sense that a new era was at hand. They were critics of their contemporary society for its unthinking conformity, and urged that each person find in Emerson's words, quote, an original relation to the universe, end quote. Emerson and Thoreau sought this relation in solitude amidst nature and in their writing. By the 1840s, they, along with other transcendentalists, were engaged in the social experiments of Brook Farm, Fruitlands, and Walden, and by the 1850s, an increasingly urgent critique of American slavery. A noiseless, patient spider, I marked where on a little promontory it stood isolated, marked how to explore the vacant, vast surrounding. It launched forth filament, filament, filament out of itself, ever unreeling them, ever tirelessly speeding them. And you, O my soul, where you stand, surrounded, detached in meaningless oceans of space, ceaselessly musing, venturing, throwing, seeking the spheres to connect them, till the bridge you will need be formed, till the ductile anchor hold, till the gossamer thread you fling catch somewhere. Oh, my soul. So, when we get down into the weeds on this poem is about loneliness. This poem is about longing. This poem is about all of those things. But there is something under the surface here that is certainly worth talking about, or at least exploring as well. But we should go through the sort of generally accepted interpretation of this poem. So, we have here in this first stanza, a noiseless patient spider I marked where on a little promontory it stood, isolated, marked how to explore the vacant, vast surrounding. It launched forth filament, filament, filament out of itself, ever unreeling them, ever tirelessly speeding them. So, we have the speaker witnessing this noiseless, patient spider. And I do realize that I said this wrong in the introduction, but at this point in the editing process, there's no way I'm going back and finishing that. Do I feel bad about it? No. We're going to move forward. A noiseless, patient spider our speaker has observed, and where it stood on a promontory. So it's the speaker is looking at this spider and noticing that as it stands there, it's trying to get sort of it's sort of trying to figure out where it's at. And to do this, it launches forth filament, 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 searching. I mean, I almost did the Spider-Man thing, but you understand what I'm saying? Sending out this filament to figure out where it is. What's the distance between me and the wall? How do I get up? What kind of web will I be making here? And that filament, 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 that's important. In the second stanza, and you, O my soul, where you stand, surrounded, detached, in measureless oceans of space, ceaselessly musing, venturing, throwing, seeking the spheres to connect them, till the bridge that you will need be formed, till the ductile anchor hold, till the gossamer thread you fling catch somewhere, O my soul. In this move here, what the speaker is doing is utilizing that spider as a metaphor for the soul. So the soul is every bit as lonely as that spider is, and that's sort of the main conceit of the poem, right? That the soul is lonely, that spider is lonely. Those two things are the same thing. But why does that work? Why is that point worth making? Well, the question is nearly begged here. I won't claim full begging, but what is a spider? A spider is predatory. A spider is hunting. A spider is not looking for friends. If your soul is lonely in that same way, your soul is lonely for something to consume. Now, there can be, I think, obviously, um, nicer interpretations of this. I don't know how valid they would be. I think that there are certainly um, more, I burnt tongue, perhaps, interpretations of this. I think that there are interpretations of this that are very much more in line with sort of toxic relationship type interpretations, right? But I think that there is a sense when you do have someone, when you really have someone, you really have a lover, you really have someone that you understand, you really have that other part of you. I think there is sort of a sense that you are enveloping that person the same way that person is consuming you. You are consuming that person. You are taking the life forces, if you will, off of each other. I think that is more at the root of what is going on here for Whitman. I think that he does. If when you get into Whitman, uh, you almost notice a sort of cycling that energies have off of each other. I don't know if I can say that in a much hippier way, but he seems to feel the reverberations of people and spiral himself up that way. I think that is what is really being commented on here, as opposed to the predatory nature of spiders. Um, but there is something else here as well. So you have the spider that is the stand-in for the soul. You have the soul that is alone. You have the speaker who is separate from the soul. So the speaker and the soul don't really, the soul doesn't really exist in this poem until that second stanza. The speaker introduces the poem from the point of view, but that second stanza there, and you, O my soul, where you stand, surrounded, detached in measureless oceans of space, ceaselessly musing, venturing, throwing, seeking the spheres to connect them, till the bridge you will need be formed, till the ductile anchor hold, till the gossamer thread you fling catch somewhere, oh, my soul. It's an interesting dichotomy, the self from the soul, the speaker here from the soul. Is there use in that? Is there usefulness in that? Well, maybe, because it seems that the soul is lonely, but the speaker is not. This plays very heavily into that interpretation of the spider as a predator, the spider as a hunter. Well, how does it play into that if the speaker and the soul are separate? The speaker here is not woeful for himself, he is woeful for his soul. By separating the two, by saying that the self and the soul are different, it is possible then for the speaker, the person part of things, to have a relatively fulfilling social life, gets to go out, gets to have friends, gets to talk to people, gets to understand things from other people, gets to be understood by other people on sort of a surface level. That is the surface level. That is as if the fly, for example, is stuck in the web. The spider can know the fly from the web. It can see the fly. It can hear the fly. It can feel those vibrations from the fly in the web without consuming it. The way the speaker can know other people. But that deeper longing, that longing of the soul, is not fulfilled from simply seeing the fly in the web. In order for the soul to be fulfilled, it has to pray. In order for the soul, the spider, to know someone else, something else, it has to consume it. And so it is very much like this poem in that the speaker is separate from the spider, the speaker is separate from the soul, the speaker is observing the spider, the speaker is observing the soul, his own soul, separate from himself. With The soul's ability to consume, it gets full. The spider's ability to consume, it gets full. What if the soul does not have to kill to consume? What if, like with Walt Whitman and his poetry, the speaker gets to rev up off of the energy of other people? What if the soul got to do that, but on that deeper understanding level? The soul in this poem is lonely and needs to consume. That's sort of a nasty sounding metaphor, right? Sort of a mean sounding metaphor. But I think on a soulful level, it really feels right, doesn't it? When you are in a relationship with that deeper connection, it doesn't feel surface level. It does not feel speaker level. It feels like consummation. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.